Yo.
Is that Adam? Oh my God.
Yeah, one
Got
second.
Mr. Adam Rubenstein coming all the way
Hey.
from the Rubiverse.
Young
Rubiverse.
Rubiverse. Oh my
That's
God.
right.
How you been, man?
I'm good. Yeah. Just doing stuff, working.
Last I heard you're in San Francisco doing like analyst stuff or something.
That's right. Yeah. I'm in San Francisco. I think I've been in the Bay Area for like 4.5 years at this point. Just like longer than I was at Rutgers. So it's weird. It's weird. Yeah. How about you both? What's going on?
I'm still at Rutgers, dude.
Cool. Nice.
That's
I'm
funny.
kidding. I'm like right outside of Rutgers, like
Yeah.
the AMC movie theater, right before you enter into the campus. I'm right across the street from there, at this apartment complex.
That's in what? That's in North Brunswick or something?
It's like right on the edge of Edison and New Brunswick.
Okay, so that's like Route 1, like across the river, like on the north side of Raritan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you ever went to the AMC movie theater, like the Starbucks over there, that's where I'm at, like across the highway.
Cool.
Yeah, working on my marketing company, Smart Contractor, helping home improvement companies.
Cool.
And
good stuff.
Yeah, it's fun.
Nice.
For me, I've basically the last few years, I've mostly been in Pennsylvania. So I worked in Philly for a while, then Pennsylvania, and I just moved to Newark, like in August.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm working remote. I plan on working remote regardless. It doesn't really matter where I live. I'm here more for family. But
that's like more on my mind recently. It's like, why am I
remote work?
It just doesn't matter.
Wait, what's that on your mind? You're like, why we're
because there's no points necessarily. Well, there's not really any strong reason that's tying me to like San Francisco at this point. Because you can be anywhere, so I might as well like be closer to family. So like I'm thinking about moving back.
Your family's still back in Jersey? Or?
Everyone's back in Jersey besides don't you have
a brother that lives next to you or something?
That's right. Yeah. Wow. Good memory. Yeah, except for my brother who he moved out here like during the pandemic though, like right before like Jan 2020. We actually live together now, which is
cool. That's great.
Yeah,
I've been telling a lot of people that's what you should do. Like one of my other friends, he basically just moved back into like his family's house and like he's hanging out with his brother and his parents. And it's like we should take advantage while we're still young and we can, because like in a couple of years everyone's gonna be married and like moved off. So like these are the
not me. I'm never getting married.
You'll still be moved off though.
So
take advantage of the time with family while we can, and we're still young.
Yeah, that's right. And like cheap rent.
Cheap rent.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Well, boys, I just want to note that this meeting is recorded. I can cut out all this. I can cut out all this jargon beforehand.
Okay, yeah.
Adam, as you might know, you may or may not know, Rob and I do a podcast, or we just started doing this little podcast every week. What the fuck is an NFT?
It's more of an educational seminar for Chris.
Yes, it's an educational seminar for me as a NFT newbie. Don't really know anything about the space, but I'm learning about how big it's getting and like seeing everybody talking about it. And so yeah, we just started like conversing, talking about the subject matter. And I really want to. I mean, we were talking a little bit, Adam, and you were skeptical of it. So I thought it would be cool as an episode to have an NFT skeptic, crypto skeptic talk, and kind of like understand.
Well, I should add that I'm minorly skeptical. I will say that like I've done a little bit of research, but not enough to be a full-blown skeptic. But I know enough to, I guess I'm allergic to hype. I think that's the way to put it.
Allergic to hype. That's interesting in and of itself. Okay, because I love hype.
Yeah. I think Adam has the right strategy. Be allergic to hype. Less likely to get wrecked.
I feel like that for me, like when I first heard of NFTs, I was really hyped about it. like this is going to be big, but I just didn't know what to do with it. I kind of like,
Yeah.
I believe in it. I believe it's going to be big. I think it's already pretty big, as Rob always tells me about like what's going on in this bubble. But I
Yeah,
really,
like Snoop Dogg NFT, right? Like that's a
he's spending, man.
launch.
He's like at the top of the lists.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
I'm not really sure what that is yet. I mean, I just heard about it from my brother yesterday. But does he have like a platform, or I think he ripped his music off of like streaming sites, and now they're like only via NFT. I don't know if you can stream it.
I don't think the infrastructure is there for that yet.
Yeah.
I think there's like 3 or so platforms that are like up and coming, but I don't think that the level of capability is like Spotify or like Apple Music. At least as far as I saw last. I haven't checked it a bit.
Yeah.
I heard Snoop Dogg bought Death Row Records, his old record label that he used to make songs on. And this is just me just not really knowing too much about it, but he's turning that into the first NFT label. And so my brain is trying to like make the synaptic connections as to what that even means. But like it seems like it's going to be a pretty big deal. I mean, he has his name on it, so like that's what I heard.
Yeah, I think that'll be cool. I guess it's to be seen as to what that actually is. You're right.
Do you feel optimistic, Adam? Pessimistic? In between about all this stuff? I mean, you work in technology, so
Yeah.
like you're so deep in technology world. I'm really interested to hear like how you feel about it, what your circles and networks are feeling about it as well.
Yeah. So I guess I'd like to start with like the question, like what value does this provide to the world? That's like kind of my compass and like how I evaluate new technology. And it might be, yeah, it's true that like, you know, it does take like vision and a good understanding of the tech to like fully evaluate whether or not this particular tech is going to be valuable, like valuable in the way that it's like improving everyday lives. So that's, I still have questions around that. I think it does have potential in spaces like empowering creators, but there's so much noise that it's hard to find that kind of value, I think, or like good ideas as to how it'll actually improve like humanity as a whole. So that's kind of where my skepticism comes in. It like doesn't really seem like it aligns with that entirely. And then well, I don't know, I have trouble like bifurcating that from crypto and like all of the carbon impact that has, which is like a measurably negative impact. But yeah, I think that's kind of where my thoughts are at the moment, not entirely like integrated. We don't have like a complete story around it, but
interesting. So that's interesting because the I guess the uncertainty is around really mainly like the value about the software, the technology. It's not about is it going to be impactful in society. Like, so do you believe that it will take over as like do you think it will hit mainstream and have a significant impact on like mainstream society and culture? Or do you not think it would take off and get into the hands of like the everyday people? Because the value is like the next step or next phase of that.
Yeah. It definitely has like a possibility of becoming mainstream, like more mainstream, I think. I just question like who is actually profiting off of it. It seems like it's still, for the most part, like rich tech people. So I just don't see how it's any different at the moment than what we currently have in terms of like hierarchy of who profits off of this stuff. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I know like there's a lot of I guess thought out there that I see and I kind of consume passively, but I just don't have I need more evidence that it's going to be something that's bringing more equity into the world before I do more research into it. I think that's it. It's like it's not even prompted more curiosity in me, and I think I'm not the only one who feels that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, so you were talking about the value of it, and then you mentioned the disadvantages or like the negative potential impacts, the things that we're seeing now that it's becoming like more popularized and more people are using it. The first people to come out of the woodworks, and we're seeing, or at least I'm seeing a lot of stuff about is like the scammers, people like scamming, and the environmental implications of this technology. And yeah, it's a very interesting conversation about the tottering like of value versus I guess cost, negative cost associated with it.
Another element is like who usually is the first group of people to profit off of new technology. It's like technology people and like people who already understands the technology, like usually early adopters of like brand new tech where things are messy are like rich tech people. So
yeah,
I think expanding out from there and providing value to like society as a whole still where I don't know, I'm just like not that confident that it'll happen. It's possible, but I'm not really seeing how. And I think you brought that up, like you're trying to find applications of NFTs and like where it makes sense. Like we have a new technology, like how do we use it to provide value to people? Yeah, I have some of the same questions.
I got questions, Rob. We're in the search for that.
I mean, I can jump in whatever. I try to take notes so I can respond back to all of them. Let's see. I think the value thing is probably a good place to start, but I'll probably just knock the easy one, which is like the carbon impact thing.
Yeah.
I feel like that one is just at this point in the technology, if you don't want to use a blockchain that has a carbon input, you don't have to. So any carbon input is a choice. Plus the most valuable blockchain is planning to basically go to proof of stake by the summer. So that's just more of you just wait a couple months type of thing. And then after that, it's really any carbon input you'd probably, you kind of have to go out of your way after this year to have the carbon input that we have.
And so, just to make sure I'm understanding, I think the majority of what I hear about like carbon impacts of I guess cryptos is usually in what's it called, I guess fungible tokens and minting those, like, right? Is that, or mining them? Like,
yeah, so yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to explain it a little bit. So there's the blockchain network, there's mining of the blockchain network if you're using a consensus mechanism uses, like how far are you into crypto at this point, Adam?
How far am I into it?
Like do I need to, well, it's fine. The audience doesn't know what this is, so let's dive in. I don't want to over explain things that I felt like you probably might already know. Yeah. We also have an audience that we have to think about. So in general, let's just say you have this black box that is called the blockchain network. And in order to sustain it, you need to do something known as mining, which is just like, we came up with this silly game where to prove that something is true on the blockchain, the only thing we can trust and know that it's true is you burned a bunch of electricity. That is it. So that is the proof of work consensus mechanism. We're like, okay, the trustings on this blockchain network,
that's right,
just burn a bunch of electricity, and then we will know that at least some entity had to burn electricity. And basically, to reverse or do something bad on the network, you'd have to burn an equal amount of electricity. And as the network gets bigger and bigger, that amount of electricity ends up getting to like billions and trillions of dollars. And so the blockchain network itself is secured by the fact that to tamper with the blockchain, you have to burn the equal amount of electricity that was placed into the blockchain. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Chris, does that make sense to you, or no? Am I pie in the sky here?
It's a little high in the sky.
Okay.
It's a little hard for me to connect to. I know it's an environmental, like just like running a mining, like to mine requires electricity, right?
Correct.
And
so to mine in proof of work, and this is where it's like so blockchain network started off in 2008. Since then, the technology is updated, and that we've come up with new ways of doing it. We're like, hey, this proof of work thing's probably not the best thing to do. It's very unsustainable.
Yeah.
And so we came up with like a whole bunch of other ones, with proof of stake being the most dominant one. So all the newer blockchain networks, so besides Bitcoin and like Ethereum and basically things like Zcash, probably Dogecoin, the early one, besides the OGs, most of the newer blockchain networks either use something like proof of stake or just another mechanism that doesn't require you to burn burn electricity to validate the network. And also the biggest network after, Ethereum is now the biggest network. The biggest network is also moving to proof of stake. So at that point, the only real big network would be Bitcoin that is using proof of work. Most of the smaller up and coming ones use proof of stake, and then the largest one would use proof of stake.
So are there any proof of stake? Are there any environmental implications with the proof of stake applications?
No, at that point, you're basically at the same level of most of everything else you're doing. So then you should be coming after Facebook over Ethereum at that point.
That's right.
Okay.
So when you go to proof of stake, like you're no longer just burning electricity to validate the network. It's just a different mechanism because we realize, hey, this is probably not sustainable. Yeah. Not necessarily like, even though I actually kind of think I think the value you're getting from cryptocurrency is worth the electricity, but like, we probably don't need a bunch of them doing the same type of mechanism.
Well, that's the next conversation, the value of cryptocurrency.
Correct. So exactly. So that gets us over the carbon impact. It's basically like at this point, you either just pick a network that's on proof of stake or you wait until the end of summer to mint your tokens. That is basically it if you care about the environment.
Yeah.
So, next is really the value towards society. Who's profiting off of it? Who's the first group? So like this becomes this interesting thing that I've been spending a lot of time on because I've been trying to learn sales and marketing and just get better at that. And so one of the things like we as software engineers have to like really, or at least for me, and I find this is true for a lot of my other engineer friends who are trying to do entrepreneurship, is that we have to accept that what we build doesn't actually matter. Like it's literally unimportant. Google, like what we're using Zoom. Zoom is literally useless to me. What matters is the value I get out of Zoom. You know what I'm saying? The value to be able to communicate with friends across the planet. So once you start thinking about it, that value is basically in the eye of the beholder. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily about me and what I'm building and what I want. It's more about you and what you want and what your problems is. Like, what is my technology helping you solve? Yeah, that's right. So it's more around like there's a couple books, but one I really like is called, actually I have it right there. It's called Demand Side Sales. But like
shameless plug.
It's really just I'm on my book, but it's a good book if anyone wants to read it. But it's really just like understanding is value is people are have a problem and they're basically adapting your technology to solve their problem. And so value is very subjective and in the eye of the beholder. And one of the things I've noticed in crypto, and this is actually something you see, is that in the NFT world is more media and art. And a lot of the people who came into crypto were either technologists first, so that was like early, then finance kids next, which if you think about it, that's basically you and I, Adam. We were like technology and finance basically. Yeah. So like that's where we came in the crypto era, not the Web3 NFT era, because we're not as like, do you collect like Pokemon cards or anything like that?
I don't.
Correct. Yeah. So like you're not like the fact that you don't even collect Pokemon cards or things like that tells me you're not the media NFT collectible type of person.
For that.
You're the DeFi finance type of person. So what looks like value to you is different than the sneakerhead who'd wait in line for an hour for like the
Exactly.
freshest J's. You would see that as like, oh, it's not worth my time. You know what I mean? But to them, it's very valuable. So like, you have to accept that what I value and what other people value are two different things. And different people are going to adopt the technology. Just like I adopt Zoom to solve one thing, you adopt Zoom. They're going to adopt the technology to solve what is valuable to them. So keep that in mind. Value is always subjective and to the different person. So
yeah. I think that makes sense. That makes sense to me. I'm speaking about a specific type of value. I don't know. I guess I care about like value that increases the standard of like human quality of living, or value that like brings equity to situations or to societies that like don't have it or don't have enough of it. So I understand like that there's value. You know, if someone's using something like every day, it's clearly valuable. Like they're you know, enjoying it, and that I'm not trying to diminish that. And I think, you know, that's important. That's just not really the same, I guess, quality of value that I'm thinking of.
You're talking about utility? Like
yeah,
value?
I'm talking about like maybe solving more foundational problems of like, I don't know, just being on this planet.
No. So we're going to build up to that first. So first,
Sure.
we have to start with just value. Except that value, like even just now as you said it, still think about that. What you're saying is valuable. Other people may not see that as valuable. They think this is useless stuff. It's not important to me that you have this foundational, like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it is always going to be subjective, and there's like a million ways. Anything you look at is always going to be like the person who is judging it is the one determining if it's valuable. Totally. So like, that's the first thing. Then you have to think about the fact that the technology kind of unlocks unique things. So because it is using blockchain networks, you get a lot of unique things that we don't get when we use like cloud distributed networks instead of these decentralized distributed networks. Because that's all a blockchain is: decentralized distributed network versus a regular distributed network, which is AWS. And so when I'm attaching my media and everything else on there, one, you're getting permanence, but two, you're also getting to interact with other people permissionlessly. And so what's happening is in the crypto, so first with DeFi, which is the space you and I care about, would understand more because we're more naturally financed, but like the media kids, so all the kids who care about art and music and everything else, they're getting the same value. So like in DeFi, we get, hey, you can create financial markets out of things that normal businesses wouldn't consider valuable enough to make a financial market off of. You can make trades with single individuals across the world, regardless of where they are and where they live. So that is us in like finance. We're basically using this technology in finance to unlock the things that we would find valuable. The media kids who are not finance or tech kids, they are doing the same thing. So you have creators actually being able to make money off of their art. You have, you basically are making markets for things that memes didn't have a market before. They were just something you made for free. You as the creative, you made it didn't matter. You're now reinventing the relationship a creator has with their fans. Before it was, hey, I care more about farming your attention. So you're flipping the entire business model. I cared more about, like me as a creative or creator, I cared more about getting as much attention. Now with NFT platform or blockchain platforms using NFTs, you can care more about quality, because it's like, instead of me needing 1 million downloads on Spotify to get $1,000, I just need one person to buy my NFT. You know what I'm trying to say? Or 10 people, whatever the price you say your thing is. So now it's like you're moving away from, hey, I just want to get the most thing and I'm caring about harvesting your attention, to, hey, I want to put out quality and have fans that stick with me for a decade. And I'm not, like, it's flipping how the relationship has to be, because you no longer are stuck in the mass market business model, which is what all the media kids are stuck in right now. So the value is like, in each circle, it's different. So for us as tech kids, we have these permissionless networks where I can deploy code to anywhere. And it's great because I'm like AWS, I pay once and I don't have to keep paying for my function. So it's kind of nice. For the finance kids, you get all these technology, like you basically have different types of markets. You have decentralized lending, you have decentralized borrowing, you have everything that we have on Wall Street. You can even, one interesting thing is you can actually do credit default swaps now because it's all tracked. You know what I'm saying? So that's the cool stuff we get as finance kids. But then the media kids are also getting their own thing. And they're the NFT kids. You get to have brands where the users are also owning the brands. instead of me getting paid in likes, I can get paid in ETH for my content that I'm posting on decentralized Facebook or whatever. Like everyone, depending on where you are, is getting different types of value. And this also even goes back to what you had said about who gets it first, where what you realize is the people who are closest to it are actually going to be getting it first. And this is an example I used to give before where, like, you know Insecure, the TV show?
No.
Okay, perfect, even better. So Insecure, it actually proves my point even more that you don't know what it is. So Insecure is this popular show on HBO about this Black woman, I guess, just going through her life. But like, what was interesting is before it was a YouTube series called The Awkward Black Girl. So like, who that appeals to would be my girlfriend, my sister, like Black women. It doesn't appeal to me. Like I only found out about it because they were watching it and made me watch it. But like, and then you guys would just never even see it. It doesn't even enter your spirit, even though now it's on HBO and it's had like multiple seasons and it's very popular. But what that's telling you is what can happen now is the people like my sister or Christine or whatever, like they would be the ones who have access to it first, not necessarily you, because you wouldn't see it. Just like it's hard for us who don't collect Pokemon cards or aren't sneakerheads to really understand NFTs. It's actually the kids who understand that culture who are going to see it first. Just like we understood DeFi more than the other people, so we saw that first, or we understood the technology, we saw it first. So what's going to happen is with crypto is like, whoever's closest to that niche is actually going to be the one who captures the value because they see it before the rest of the market does, because they have that problem genuinely. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
To me.
I think there are a few questions I have about some specifics in there, but I think it makes sense. I think, like, firstly, I think some people approach solving problems from the problem first, and others approach it from like new tech or just like tech that exists and applying it to something else. And yeah, like I see, like I think it is important, and maybe I should be doing more of it, of like, you know, trying to understand and keep up with new technology. But I guess part of me just like isn't interested.
Well, no, that's what I'm trying to say. You don't care about media stuff like that, so you're not like, you paid attention to DeFi because you kind of care about finance, but you're more tech. You're tech first, DeFi like probably secondary, and then media is like a last third, and it's like I get to it if I get to it.
Well, I guess, well, firstly, I do like make music, and I have tried to like sell it.
You need to get into decentralized music, man. You're missing out. 1 million downloads is not worth the coin. It's BS. It's bullshit. I can't even deal with that.
There's not really a lot of good avenues to do it, I guess, like besides I mean, like, how would you actually make any sort of like significant income on music without something like NFTs? Like I think I am a little closer to that, but I guess my question about like NFTs is like, you said something about like attention, and how people who are creating media are creating content for attention, which means like it has to scale basically to the lowest common denominator. And you know, you need to get like 1 million
correct
views on a video or something to get enough, like, I don't know.
I think I did the math. It was like 1 million views equals $1,000 on Spotify, like 1 million listens. I was like, this is bullshit. I would never play this game.
It's like 1/100 of a cent or something like that.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this scam?
Yeah, it's not great. But I don't think there's still problems, I think, with focusing on creating content for like a few people, because those people usually are, I guess, high income. Like you're now making content for people who can pay for it. You're still making content for, like, you know, well, I guess rather you're now making content for people who like have very high incomes, you know.
So this is an interesting thing in crypto called airdrops. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
It's basically what you do is you have your little economy, your community, and all you do is you just reward people with magical internet money, so tokens out of thin air, and you give it to them. And so like I remember actually my last airdrop, I got like $20,000 just for buying a domain because I was a contributor to the network. And like that is a way that you kind of solve that in crypto, where it's like, but the problem is how do you figure out, like right now the problem we're trying to figure out is how do you decide who's a good contributor? And so that becomes a hard thing because there's going to be people gaming it. But like in general, the way people are solving that is just like you give to the contributors of your network or your community. So you just give the value. So instead of me owning all the shares in my music, I give 50% of the royalties to whoever were the contributor, like the early listeners. You know what I'm saying?
I see.
But
Yeah.
I think what Adam was saying, the early contributors or the people who invest in the NFT, like the creator, are the ones who have access to that money.
So you don't necessarily have to sell selling your NFT directly is one way to go about it. The other way is I can just release it for free and say, hey, all of my early fans, you guys now have 50% of the royalties that ever come from this song. That is another approach to do it. You can also now think creatively about subscription platforms where it's like, hey, I can give subscription to my TV show, like Netflix style as an NFT. But then anytime someone sells it, I could collect 5%. And like there's people like Gary Vee's making millions off of secondaries because he's getting 5% every time someone sells his little NFT.
Wow.
And like there's the business models, like NFTs are changing the business model, which is going to change the incentives and the behaviors. And the current business models create a certain incentives and behavior, and those are no longer the only options in town.
I think with the new technology, I think it makes sense that there's like a lot of different business models that you can have with that. I'm skeptical that we'll choose the right ones.
I am also humans being humans. You crazy?
Yeah. Like it's just, I think the way that power structures exist, like it's the people who have more capital are like more likely to accumulate, even more of it. So
no, I agree with you. The thing I like about crypto and Web3 in general is that we're the only part of the stack that actually spends our time talking about it. Like we are obsessed with creating incentive mechanisms and basically hierarchy structures. Like, would you rather have the smartest minds in the world thinking about how to basically come up with theoretical games that makes everyone more equal, or how to attract your attention? I think eventually someone's going to figure out a model that works. And every time someone does, people just copy it. It's just copy pasta. Someone figured out Bitcoin, everyone copied it. Someone figured out Ethereum, everyone copied it. And so as we iterate, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, as we iterate, I think I'd rather us keep iterating down the path of like, because now this is the first time I've ever heard people even talking about these incentives, at least in tech. Like it's always been like, how do you extract the most value? Now it's like, how do I also make sure my fans are wealthy? How do I, like, you're turning users to actual members in crypto. It's not like, hey, I get a domain name and like, that's it, I've enriched your platform. No, it's like you have to now pay your users. You have DAOs where the users control all the decision-making that happens with it. So it's like, we're experimenting with everything that works. I don't think we figured it out. High chance we just mess up the whole thing, but like, I'd rather spend the time figuring it out and fail than like, whatever. I like the current system. You know what I mean?
And it's a self-correcting process. So like when you do fail inevitably, and like that, like the community and the space will kind of like auto-correct itself.
Right. Yeah. Your coin will crash if you fail.
I guess the optimistic viewpoint is like smart people will get together and find that incentive structure, and that incentive structure become the popular one. But given what's happened with like Web 2, I think there's not really like evidence that it'll happen.
That's
like
fair.
There's evidence like to the contrary that it'll just,
Zucks is going to take it over.
I guess, yeah, it depends if you hold like an optimistic view of it, but I needed more of a reason for optimism, I think. Yeah.
So my actual thing is that because I remember I went to Vanguard because I was like, oh, crypto's here. I'll go to a big tech company, like a big finance company, and then they will like adopt crypto. Like I figured I would get there before the rest of the world got there. So that's why I went to Vanguard like 2-3 years ago. I was like, oh, this is the smart strategic move. Crypto's coming, I'll be there before. Not the case. What you learn is like incentive structures really dictate everything. And even Vanguard, like they were actually trying. They hired like consultants because they realized they had to pivot things. But like even getting into something like crypto is just not worth the risk for a big company. even Mark Zuckerberg is like yelling his head off just to like get his whole company to pivot. And like he has like enough like voting that he can do that. Very few other CEOs even have the kind of power he does. You know what I mean? And so it's going to be very hard for most big companies to really take that kind of risk of crypto. I think they will come in late adopters, but what you're going to see happen is like the things that are crypto native are going to be the ones that succeed because their business models allow them to do things that the current incumbent business models cannot. So like one of the biggest thing, and this is why when we talk about community at some point, it's like letting the community own the stuff is it's the competitive advantage that lets you survive against the incumbents, because you can't I don't even think Mark Zuckerberg can get away with convincing them to say, hey, let's cannibalize 80% of our business and give all the profits to the people posting on Instagram. Like imagine every time you post on Instagram, you got like a tenth of a penny or for whatever percentage of attention. They're not going to give up that kind of profit. You know what I mean? Like, but like the crypto native companies are going to start with that as default. So they're going to be competing with the business model. And I think like community ownership is going to be the thing that lets them outcompete the incumbents. Because their business model cannot allow that to happen. It's just, I mean, I'm sure a couple who are really smart will do hybrids, but it's just going to be really hard to compete against purely crypto native companies.
Interesting. So, I never even thought about it like that for Meta or Facebook or Zuckerberg, what he's doing, because I thought he had the most advantage because he's
I think he's smart. He realizes he is in a shit position. He is pivoting hard. He is pivoting fucking hard. I'm like this now. That's why I actually don't sleep on Mark. It's like
that's so
talking shit. I'm like, no, he's being smart.
Yeah,
he's getting out of the game as quickly as possible.
I never assumed to think, or like people wouldn't assume to think Zuckerberg would be in a shit position in this arena. But I think Zuckerberg is such a quintessential like interesting company to follow, because people hate him because of this whole chain. Like they think, or at least the people, like what I've heard is that people don't like him because he's trying to create this. He's basically trying to get people to do things on his terms. I don't really understand it. I can't really speak to it too much. But yeah, why do you think people hate him so much? Like what he's doing?
I never understood it. I mean, I just never paid attention. I also haven't used Facebook in so long. Sure. I was even more of a Snapchat kid anyway than even Instagram. So like I just never paid attention.
Nice.
I think he'll take off. I think what he's done will take off. He just seems like a smart guy.
No, I mean, one of the things I have a thesis that basically like any software network they should either be figuring out crypto right now. If you are a software enabled network, you are actually in a dangerous position if crypto succeeds, because you're going to get all these community owned networks where they're going to outcompete you because they're giving more value to the users and the creators. Like if any of these music NFT marketplaces succeed, they outcompete Spotify because the users are now getting random money just from listening, and the creators are getting more money from putting their music on. It's just they don't have enough scale yet. But if any of them scale, the whole thing's fucked for Spotify. You know what I mean? Like it's just done. And so like it's not even just that, it's like all of them. Like I have the way you think about it is like you kind of think about something like Uber, where even Uber is a perfect example, but we have to figure out decentralized. We basically have to figure out proof of location, which I don't think anyone has. But if someone figures it out, then yeah, they're fucked. But it's like you kind of have the users, the code, and then the business, and then the driver. So it's like 4 people. And all that's happening is you're just cutting off the business, writing more code, and giving all the value to the drivers and the users. So it's now users, drivers, more code, as opposed to users, drivers, code, business. And that's all these things are. And so all these software networks are like, someone's going to make some version of whatever you're doing as a software network that is X percentage more aligned with the users and the creatives on there. And you are going to have to figure your shit out.
So, I mean, the business essentially is the middleman. Like without them, there's no one who's like siphoning, I guess, cash flow off of the system. And it's just like the creator. And then, yeah.
But you have to figure out how to write code that actually does that properly, which is the hard part. How do you get people to actually do the right thing?
Who's writing the code then if it's not the business?
Well, no. Well, what I'm trying to say is once you figure out a DAO model like that works, which people aren't really doing, then everyone can just copy it. Like I don't need to go figure out Bitcoin. I can just go download it and make my own Robert coin. So like making a token is solved right now. Making a smart contract platform is solved right now. We are trying to figure out decentralized music platforms. Once someone's figured it out, everyone else can just copy it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The problem is going to be actually getting the liquidity, or I guess the user, the amount of users and creators on there. But I think the model I think will be figured out. At least that's my optimistic view. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we don't figure out one good one.
There's other functions of the business though, like in Uber's case, like they provide a level of trust that, you know, there's at least tools available in case like someone steps into a car and like the driver is harassing them. Like how is anything like NFTs going to solve that?
So this is actually something I was working on back when I was at MEM. It's called a decentralized ID. So like it's, now I'm like, how do I even explain that? This is that way cutting edge crypto, and we're like having problems figuring out proof of work. So the general thesis is that there's the Web3C consortium, the people who make like HTML and stuff like that. They came up with this thing called a decentralized ID, and they also have this other spec called a verifiable credential. So at a high level, it's basically anyone has an ID, and anyone can attest a verifiable credential. So I can say this person is a US citizen. I can attach that to your ID, and now everyone can see this ID wherever you go, and we can all like know this information about you. From there, you can build up to.
Is that the analogy you were talking about, the security guard at the bar? Like the
yeah. I mean, then you get into how do you do this in a privacy way? So use zero knowledge proofs. Okay, now I have a lot of things I have to explain because I've jumped too much. Okay, so at a high level, this is not even like necessarily decentralized Web3 tech. Is just something that the body of people who make HTML came up with. It's called a decentralized ID. It's basically just a data format where you can put information about an entity. Okay, so that part's easy. So like you, Adam, as an entity, or I can have a business that's an entity. Doesn't really matter. I can put information. And the way you put it is through something called a verifiable credential. So you attach a piece of information that is like can't be tampered with, if that makes sense. So or at least if it's tampered with, everyone will see it. Same way that blockchain works. Like you can't tamper with the network without everyone seeing and then reject it. So that's a variable. So it's basically like an entity gets some information attached to them. And you can even do this using blockchain technology stuff called zero knowledge proof, where you can basically say something is true without revealing like what it is. So I can know you are above 18 without you giving me all your information on your license plate. So those are like 3 layers of things. So like, but in general, that is one way where if you can do that, you can now start building a reputation system around them. So the Uber example, which I actually think is going to take years to get to, I think it's the pure software networks, like the Spotify's that are going to be first. But like, if we ever got to that, if you think about something like Uber, a bigger part of it is that reputation system. Reputation and proof of location are the 2 biggest things that you need to start disrupting in Uber. But you wouldn't start there. You'd start with something simple and easy like a Spotify, where you basically just need a collection of musicians and users. You do that, you kind of are good. But like eventually we start getting to these higher level things. And then you start getting to higher level networks like countries. People don't realize like the way blockchain tech ends is that we start disrupting nation states. And so like, but that is way too advanced. And we're having like, we got to build up to that. But like that becomes the end game where you're building crypto, because like a nation is just a network of people managing assets.
Yeah, that makes sense. And managing assets and also having disputes and like, you know.
That is all of crypto. Yes.
I think, well, I don't know. I would say it's nation state is more than that. I think it's also, you know, you enter in agreements with that shared agreements with the rest of the citizens in the state that you won't, you know, kill your neighbor. That's like a pretty serious agreement. So I mean, I can kind of see the parallel though and how it could work. I guess you
have to build up a bunch of things before you get to that. Like I think it's
just my skepticism of like some of how NFTs could impact society is like, how do you enforce that? And I know you've probably heard about this and thought about it, but I'm curious to see.
How do you enforce what exactly?
how do you enforce like contracts? Like
Well,
the
I mean,
contract exists and there's reputation, but there's no one to like prevent something very bad from happening in the
so that
moment.
is the beauty of, so like the first blockchain networks were just coin networks, so like Bitcoin, Dogecoin. The second ones were smart contract platforms. They're basically code that enforces itself. So it's like a smart contract will always do what it says it will do. So
Yeah.
one of the biggest things you have with Web2 networks like Facebook is you as a developer, you can come on, find like something interesting, start like actually right now I want to do something where I scrape data off of Discord's API. But if I start doing something and it starts to threaten their business, they will just turn that off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I couldn't actually scale a business off of that. Whereas a smart contract platform, there's no one to turn that off. It'll do what the contract says. Your biggest problem is actually misinterpreting the contract and not realizing there's like a bug in there. But like in smart contract platforms is basically you write a set of code and it is locked in and can never be changed. And so that is the thing you actually get the guarantees up front. When you start bringing it into the real world, that's actually where it gets harder. Does the external world actually accept the rules that were dictated in the blockchain? That's where it gets hard. But anything on the blockchain is enforced by the rules of the blockchain. It is why it's called a consensus mechanism, because it's basically everyone entering into the network agrees to the rules of the network from the very beginning. And this is why I'm saying like this stuff gets to nation state level thing. If you like in 50 years, we will now be talking about it because like a lot of the fundamental pieces will be built up over the next 50 years. But like you can see how that extrapolates over time. If we just keep playing this game, there's nowhere else it goes beside the country.
But I think my problem is the exact one that you mentioned, which is like it all makes sense within the structure of NFTs, but what happens when you try to bring it to the real world? Like I think the problem is like operations, like that team at Uber who would be helping with like trust and safety, and that's like their operations team. I don't know. I mean, for a government, it's going to be.
So I sit on these, they just actually, and then I used to sit on these calls called DAO apps. So it's like basically people who run decentralized orgs or partially decentralized orgs. I don't see any of them that's fully decentralized, but like they're just people operating. And so like all this stuff is being like, this is now you're at the cutting edge of where the technology is. We figured out how to make a digital asset. So that's actually a really revolutionary thing. Then we figured out how to make code that you can always trust and has basically contractual guarantees. Like this Lambda service will always do what it says it will do. No one can rug it. It's going to always be there. You know what I mean? So we figured that out with smart contracts. Now we're figuring out how to make decentralized organization. And that's the part that is really hard because people are fucking messy. But like that is the cutting edge of crypto right now. We're just trying to figure out how to get people to do the fucking right thing. How do you get a bunch of people to coordinate in a way where they actually don't even need to trust or like each other, but still do the right thing? We've got them to agree. We've gotten people to agree who owns billions of dollars. We've gotten people to agree what is the state of a piece of software. We're now trying to get people to agree on organization level.
And once you figure it out once, then you can replicate it.
Yeah, as people figure out, and I think in general, I don't think they're all going to work. Just like there's not one crypto asset, there's not one smart contract platform, there's not going to be one way to run a DAO organization. There's going to be multiple ways. And we're going to slowly start figuring them out with different levels of guarantees on chain versus off chain. And that's all that's happening is just we're figuring out different ways at each scope of the like thing.
Man, this goes so deep.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
like you said, it's gonna take like 50 years until it gets like to this point where it's like or like the country level. But it's like honestly, it could happen sooner. Like we've gotten to this point in society with all these rules without this technology.
Well,
like
think about what just happened 2 weeks ago, where collectively the crypto industry in a week gave $60 million to a country to fund its war effort. Like people just sent $60 million of like that can like
that's already
once you start doing that, like it's just like, oh, I just go buy an island. Like there's actually crypto projects where they're just trying to buy an island with a group of friends and start their own nation. Like this may happen faster than I think. I just think there's a lot of pieces that like have to be put together to have a functioning country. But like people are gonna start attempting this in the next couple of years. Like if someone's gonna go buy an island and say, hey, we have a nation now, someone's gonna fund some like military operation. I mean, we just all did. We sent $60 million to Ukraine using crypto. Like that is like in a week. This is like, we're not even pushing the limits of this stuff. We're just like, this is like baby steps.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point that like It does take a while to solve these issues, and I don't think that they're like unsolvable. Yeah, no, I think I like understand more about how it potentially could like solve some of the bigger problems that we have. I think it makes sense, but yeah, I think I'm someone who needs to start with. I will say, I guess I'm just not really an early adopter of technology. Let me just put that out there. Although, like, I do try to at least have some knowledge of new tech. So thank you.
I mean, none of us are, because we all be Bitcoin. We all knew about Bitcoin in college. We didn't get it. So.
Yeah, we actually. I don't know. I saw like a Bitcoin machine in 2014 or something like that.
Oh my god!
In Denver, I think.
Or
Boulder.
really?
It was in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there was like a what was it? A 3-day startup that was in the Bitcoin headquarters or something. What does that even make sense? Is it supposed to be decentralized?
There is no Bitcoin headquarters, and there is.
Yeah, I know. So I was like, I had no idea what that was. That was in like Lower Manhattan. And the ceiling was leaking. Really random. But yeah, that was an early experience. I think that was probably also 2015. About 2015. Yeah.
So to wrap it up, so when we started the conversation, Adam, you're seemingly skeptical on the value proposition of crypto and NFTs. Do you think that has changed, or do you see the value now after and kind of like understanding the different perspectives of value?
Yeah, I do feel like my knowledge of it and its potential has changed a bit. So firstly, thanks for the conversation. It's definitely insightful for me. I still have skepticism, and I think I will, because the problems are hard. Like,
yeah,
especially around like how do you solve like the fundamental issues of working?
You're dealing with like principal agent problems. You're dealing with like
exactly like the human to human interactions still have trust issues, even if like the tech doesn't. So yeah, there are questions that I still have, but I think
sure
they're going to be around for a while.
People are the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the NFTs. That's the end of this. That's the end insight. People are the problem. It's not the NFTs.
Yeah.
We're complex creatures. Well, guys, I appreciate the time. This is I thought this was great talk, great episode of the podcast, and we'll see everybody on next podcast episode next weekend. Bye, guys.
Okay. All right.